Welcome to another episode of the STR Sisterhood. I'm your host, Stacy St. And first of all, let me just say thank you for inviting me into your day today. Now, before we dig into today's episode, you know what, girl? I want to share a quote with you that I recently read that resonates with me. And it says, I repeat, perfect is boring, human is beautiful. And those awesome words come to us from one and only supermodel, Tyra Banks, who's also pretty beautiful herself. All right. So in this episode, we are sitting down with the one and only Steph Weber, and she is sharing all about her journey into hosting and co-hosting while being an entrepreneur and a mom. And let me tell you, she drops so many amazing nuggets you won't want to miss. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into my conversation with Steph. So today we are here with Steph Weber, and we are going to have such a fun conversation about co-hosting. First, Steph, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor. I'm so stoked.
So let's have you start off and share with our audience a little bit about who Steph Weber is and where you live in the world.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Well, let me give you a little bit about our background into how we got into this crazy short-term rental industry. And we can kick it off with where we live currently. So we are Indianapolis natives, which is where the majority of our business is focused currently. But I have a background in branding and marketing. And so I worked in the fashion industry for a decade. And that was great. I started my own business actually as a fashion, beauty, and travel influencer. And through that, realized that small businesses I was supporting in that regard needed help beyond just what I was doing from an influencer perspective. And so I created the Weber Co., which has been my branding and marketing company now for a number of years, made that full-time leap into entrepreneurship in 2020. Like I know so many of you listening made big leaps that year, which is great. And so we got into the world of short-term rentals in 2023. I was 8 months pregnant with our second baby. And we thought, yes, now is the perfect time to invest in our first property and also start our co-hosting business and really talk about our big dream in this industry. And so April 2023, we were on house tours here in Indianapolis. We decided that Indy is a really cool, for those of you who are like, we know nothing about Indianapolis. It's a really cool city for events. It's also very central. So the holidays are coming up and families use Indianapolis as a gathering space. And it's just very central for everyone. We also have like the best airport. So it's cool. It's a really cool city, awesome local vibes, local community. And we having two kiddos, ages 3. And then, we had our newborn at the time. We kind of were like, let's do something that's close that we can manage and that we can do ourselves. And set up ourselves and all the things. So we invested here in Indianapolis and we started our co-hosting business at that same time. And then a very large opportunity presented itself to invest in a micro resort that we've called Cabins on the Cumberland. So we are building 11 cabins on 9 acres. That's riverfront property in Jamestown, Kentucky. So our life for the last a little over a year now has been a whirlwind, but here we are. It's great.
But I'm sure you wouldn't change it for the world, right?
No, would not. I would not. And, we definitely have a bigger vision for it and building generational wealth for our boys and our family and just being able to create a different life than what we grew up with and being able to buy a camper someday and go for a year and travel. Like these are some of the things that we're working toward as well. So
what's that? It's funny. So actually, one of my students just did van life for a year. She traveled the U.S. She sold, assets at home and rented out her primary home. And I told her last week that I'm going to live vicariously through her because she just got back from her year-long van trip and they're moving to Hawaii for 3 months. Oh, so I'm like, Ashley, girlfriend, you need to take me with you.
Yep. That's amazing.
And fun fact, so I grew up in Columbus, Indiana. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah. I love this. That's wow, Stacy. Amazing.
I grew up. So I totally sidebar and squirrel for anyone listening because you were like, I didn't tune into this podcast to talk about Indiana, but I literally our thing to do if we were getting really bold, is we would drive to the Greenwood Mall. You know what? Like, our
Yep.
that's the thing to do for me.
That's it. That's actually, we grew up, we went to Center Grove High School, Stacy. So again, like, yes, that was where we hung out. It's so great. I love this. Our worlds collide.
That's right. That's right. All right. So you started, and we have so many different aspects that we could go down with this conversation, but I wanted to talk with you about your co-hosting business today for this episode, because as you and I both know, there's tremendous opportunities to serve other, owners of property as co-hosts. And I feel like so often I hear women talking about, I want to co-host, but I'm not sure how to grow my business. I'm not sure how to get the clients. Like, how do I co-host if I don't have any co-hosting experience? So I want to dive into some of those topics with you. I know you mentioned that you launched your property and launched your co-hosting business kind of at the same time. Will you walk us through a little bit about what that looked like?
Absolutely. So we have a real estate agent that we're connected to here in Indianapolis that I actually helped support her in her branding and marketing efforts for her real estate business back in 2021. And so when we moved back here to Indiana, she helped us find our home here that we live in. And then we told her that we wanted to get into the world of short-term rentals. So she was my first phone call when I was like, hey, we're ready to buy. But we also are thinking about maybe starting a management company. And she was like, let's go to dinner. And I think for her, she was really seeing here in the Indianapolis market, how many short-term rental owners are A, underserved, but B, just have no idea how to manage their properties and how to do it really well and prioritize the guest experience. So we went to dinner and she happened to have a former client that she knew. And this former client's management company was walking away from management. They were like, we're going to be a data-oriented company. We're only focusing on data. We are not going to focus on the management side of things anymore. So Stacy, I was literally in hospital on May 10th, giving birth to our baby, when our real estate agent connected me to who would become our first co-hosting client. So we did not have proof of we'd been hosts for a year and I can show you everything we've done. I just knew what our vision was and what I was capable of from a branding and marketing perspective, and that we were here locally. So I tried to position us as effectively as I could, and she took a chance. I was like, I'm giving birth to our baby, but like, I will contact you in 5 days and then we can have a conversation and go from there. She was like,
hold on. Hold on. I'm having a labor pain. Can you just hold on for about 3 minutes? I'll be right back. Give me a minute.
Yeah. So she was our very first co-hosting client. And so we actually took her on. We took her on and agreed to that contract before we closed on our own short-term rental here in Indy. And so we were kind of like building these two at the same time next to each other. But then one led to the next. And now here we are with a business that has created another 6-figure stream of revenue for us in 12 months.
That's awesome. I want to go back to the conversation you had in the hospital for a hot minute, because again, I mean, all joking aside, I think that's so cool. Number one, that you could have the discussion, like literally, I'm having a baby right now. Can I call you back in 5 days? And you clearly made a mark because they did let you call back in 5 days. But I want to talk with you about your thought process of how to position the conversation. Because again, I want to share, like, if you are listening to this and thinking, I want to get my first co-hosting client, but I've never hosted. How do I even have that discussion? How do I come across in a way that sounds confident and sharing my vision? Can you just peel back the layers a little bit? Like, how did you prep for that conversation? And was it your other business experience that led you to feel like you could share a vision for what you wanted in co-hosting more easily?
For sure. I think for me, I'm a very vision-oriented person. So I knew what we wanted to create with our co-hosting business and what I wanted that to look like. And I got clear around that in April. And for me, in any business venture I'd ever walked down, it started with the vision first, followed by, okay, what's the action that's going to help me get there? And the action, for anyone who's listening, I would tell you to find a mentor. Find a mentor that can support you. Find a mentor that can teach you things that you don't know. Like, before we got into this, Stacy, I was on calls trying to understand, like, everyone keeps telling me that I can automate so much of this business. Well, I don't like make that make sense in my brain. What can I automate? They're like, oh, your pricing. Okay, great. Like, I need to go and learn about how I can automate pricing. I need to go learn about how I can automate guest communication. So I knew that there were some key things that I was going to need to set myself up for success. But at the end of the day, your clients don't really care what they're automating. You kind of have to figure out from a co-hosting perspective, what are the pain points? Oftentimes the pain points are their properties being mismanaged. Their guests are not happy. They have poor reviews, and they don't feel like their asset is being taken care of. And if you can speak to those pain points and help your client on the other side understand how you're going to solve that, how you're going to make their life better and allow them to stress less and have a great guest experience and get those 5-star reviews, that's what they're really looking for. And I would say, like, that's pretty common in this industry as a whole. So I knew that I could position us as, okay, I know how we are going to support guests and create an experience. I know how we can differentiate ourselves there. I'll figure out the tech stuff. I don't know what that looks like, but I know that we're going to do it. I remember being on that call with her though, and she said, so my current company just charges me $100 a month to like restock the coffee. And I was like, that doesn't make sense in my brain. Okay, that's fine. Like, that's cool. I'll make sure that you have a fully stocked coffee bar, but how about I just charge you for whatever it actually costs?
Right.
So there are things that you may fumble your way through a little bit. And if you can fumble through it confidently and make you confident in your abilities, then you have somebody who's probably going to say yes, because at the end of the day, they're being underserved where they currently are, and they need a different solution.
Yeah. I think the other thing to call out, and I'm curious to get your perspective on this, is if you are just starting out as a co-host, and let's say you don't have any other clients, reposition that as an advantage for that owner. Hey, listen, guess what? I am not going to be pulled in 43 different directions with 43 different clients. You are my top priority, and I can dedicate my focus and energy on making sure your property or properties are served in the best way possible. So you can look at a lack of a portfolio as, oh, this is a negative, but brainstorm ways to turn that and spin that into a positive for your target client that you're talking to. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. You know what? That's actually what we did with her. I like remember saying to her, listen, we are going to be a boutique co-hosting company. It was never my intention when we started this company, Stacy, for us to have hundreds of homes that we're trying to manage. That's not my goal. And it never will be. And I shared that with her. I was like, we want to be able to provide really high level quality service to our homeowners and also to our guests. And I know for us, we just want to take on really great properties with owners that trust us to do our job. And we're going to support you. And we'll navigate it together. We'll figure it out together. And honestly, in any business situation, when you're working with someone, especially if you're just getting into something, it's okay to be like, listen, we're just getting started with this, but here's what that means for you. Just exactly like what you share. Here are the benefits and here's the advantage. Versus a company that has hundreds of listings, it's going to be like, how much are you contributing to our bottom line? It's like, no, let's like really figure out how we can help you stand out and differentiate yourself. So anyway, yes, it's a huge thing that you can leverage to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I'm curious, when you started with that first client, what did you trip up on initially? Like, what things surprised you? Like, oh, wow, I don't know how to do this. What were some of the hiccups you experienced?
Yeah. So I think for us, it was really just the setup of a few different things. So one was the setup of the home and really understanding she was working with a traditional property management company. So again, we're a co-hosting company. So our owners own their listings and they collect their payouts and we send an invoice monthly for our services. So she was coming from a company that wasn't the reality and they were truly property management. So trying to figure out where her accounts were, like where she was like, we have an Ecobee. We go to the house. She didn't have an Ecobee. We were like, you just have a regular thermostat. What's happening here? How do we get your ring accounts back? How do we get things set up in the way that we need to so that we can get your listing away from them and then create your own listing, right? So it was some of those things that we had to navigate from maybe a tech standpoint. And now we've created systems and processes in place to go, okay, anytime we're setting up a property, this is how we do it. Here's our SOP for it. Like now we've got the process, but it's kind of one of those things that you sort of have to figure out as you go and not be afraid to ask questions where you need to ask questions. Like She didn't have an Ecobee. I was like, why did you think that you had this? Like, this was not even in your home at all. So it was things like that. And then just like logistics of figuring out trash and figuring out cleaners and interviewing cleaners and really understanding what to ask, which we made some mistakes on at the beginning. And just also too, didn't know what our expectations would be going into it. I didn't know that I would have to tell a cleaner to like do certain things. I thought it was just standard across the board, so some of those learning curves, I would say were maybe some of the biggest hiccups at the beginning, or just like learning lessons. The very first guest that stayed, it was over Memorial Day weekend, of course. And we get a call and I'm at the farmer's market with our 2-week-old baby and our 2.5-year-old at the time. And they're like, we're sitting on this bench and it just completely fell and broke everywhere. And I was like, okay, great. So how do we figure this out? And the guest was upset because they had 11 people and now they couldn't all eat together. And I was just like, oh my gosh, what did we just get into? But again, like, now I get those calls and I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like, here's the solution that we can offer you. So you have to kind of be willing to learn as you go and know that it's going to feel a little messy at the beginning, but you will figure it out. It will be okay. And you have to ground yourself in that.
Amen. Amen, sister. So talk to us then after you launched your own property, after you launched your first co-hosted client. How did you go about getting your next co-hosting client? What did that look like?
Your network is your best friend. So this real estate agent that sent us our first client sent us 2 additional clients after that time. And so we have continued to work with real estate agents and network that way, kind of first and foremost. We also, of course, established our brand and our presence here in the Indianapolis area. So again, this is my branding brain going, pick your market. Sometimes I talk to those that want to co-host and it's like, well, you could be in any market you want. You can do remote co-hosting wherever, but what makes sense for you? And for us, just focusing here in this Indianapolis market, I was like, what if we just really get great at co-hosting here and we become the go-to in this market and we focus solely on that goal until we feel like we hit our 25 great homes with great owners. And that's what we want. So we kind of like dove in heavily here. We created our messaging and our positioning around that. And then we also started partnering with different local businesses that could support us in helping the guest experience be all that it is. So we have a local coffee roastery that we work with that provides coffee for all of our properties that we co-host on, which is really cool. So we've been able to do some things like that. And again, just continuing to build our network and letting people know what we do, how it's different than traditional property management, what our goals are here in the Indianapolis area, how we're separating ourselves, and having those conversations with real estate agents, with designers, with anyone who touches potential investors. I just connected with, he's a real estate agent, but they have a long-term property management company. And he's like, Steph, I want nothing to do with short-term rentals. I'm like, great, I'll take those. I'll give you the long terms because I want nothing. That feels boring to me. I don't want that. And so he created this really beautiful referral relationship, and we're going to do some social media content together to support one another and our businesses that are both here in Indy. Right. So figuring out where you can network, where you can reach out to people. There are multiple different ways to obtain co-hosting clients. We just heavily leaned into referrals and word of mouth. We are just now starting to experiment with skip tracing, and we'll see how.
There you go. Okay. So you and I both know what skip tracing is, and we use it a lot in the real estate investing world. For anyone who's listening who isn't familiar with skip tracing, will you share a little bit about what it is and how you're utilizing it?
Okay. Skip tracing is basically like you becoming an investigator to figure out who owns which properties, where they are, and who's currently managing them. So it's a little bit of an involved process, but largely you can start by going to AirDNA, and you can actually start, if you're paying for an AirDNA subscription, you can actually filter based on those properties that have 4.8 stars or less. And then you can start the process of trying to figure out who actually owns those properties and obtaining their contact information. So I have a team member that's helping to support in this, and she's great. You can hire VAs, or we have a guest experience representative that's helping to support with these efforts. You get their contact information and you can start texting and calling. Again, it's certainly not the way that I would have wanted to start co-hosting, but that's how I do business. I like to start very relationship based, and I think referrals and word of mouth is always going to be your number one source of your clients, and typically the best clients come from that as well. But I can tell you, after doing this process for the last couple of weeks, we've talked to a number of investors who do feel like they're being currently underserved by their existing property management companies. So they exist. And if you're willing to put yourself out there a little bit, you can find them and they're willing to talk to you and see a different way.
Yeah. And I would say too, I'd be curious to get your thoughts. I think if you're just starting out, maybe don't go the skip tracing route, go the route of building your network. I will say for me personally, the number one biggest way I've grown my full service property management company and my co-hosting business has been serving real estate agents. So think about in your market where you are wanting to co-host, what real estate agents you already have relationships with, how you can support your local real estate agent community as someone who is involved in the short-term rental industry. What can you provide to the real estate agents to help them serve their clients best? I call that my middleman method. I teach it in my co-hosting biz builder. Like, it's a whole thing for me. It has been game changing. So I love that you're utilizing your relationship building skills and doing that with real estate agents specifically.
This would have been difficult to do at the beginning of our journey and just trying to get started with co-hosting. And again, this is where it's like, what real estate agents do you already know that already trust you or that follow you on social media or whatever it may be? But now we actually have an entire training on investing in short-term rentals here in Indianapolis that shows real data from properties that we co-host and have co-hosted over the last year or so. And we share that with real estate agents. Like, hey, if you work with investors, this is a huge asset for you to be able to use and leverage. And of course, we're introducing our co-hosting business, but it gives your clients really good insight on what actually works here in the Indianapolis market. And it supports your real estate agents as well, because they may or may not know. They may have a little bit of a pulse on what's going on in short-term rentals, but they don't always have access to the real data of what's going on. And I mean, I can very clearly show AirDNA projected $40,000 for this property, and it's already at $55,000 in 8 months. Here's how we did it. And actually break that down in this training as well. So you can create assets like that and become a trusted resource. And that's a huge advantage for you.
Amen. I love that. So I'm curious, are you delivering that training in a live session or is that pre-recorded and you just share it with agents?
It's pre-recorded. So it lives on the homepage of our website. And then of course I promote this on social media as well. And then any real estate agents that I'm connecting with, usually I'm reaching out and introducing myself. And then I want to get to know a little bit about them. And then I say, hey, we actually have this resource. If you work with investors, do you feel like this would be beneficial? If so, I'm happy to send it your way, at which time then I share that with them. But we're doing it through an opt-in. So we're collecting email addresses so that we can continue to market to and connect with those who are opting into that.
That is so fun. So fun. So Steph is, again, multi-talented entrepreneur right here. We're talking about co-hosting, but she also is into branding and marketing and knows advertising and influencer, and you also do design, right? Like, hello, do you sleep?
Yeah, no. Sometimes it feels like I do not, but it's good. It's fun. And like we were talking about before we hopped on, like, it doesn't always feel like work, right? It feels like something that, what a privilege that we have to be able to wake up and do what we love and serve our guests and serve our clients in this capacity. And sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. Sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I got to like really realign myself today, right? But at the end of the day, it's like when you find that thing that really lights you up and you can go all in on it, that's been the short-term rental industry for us.
Yeah. Yep. Talk to me a little bit about how you're vetting your co-hosting clients, or are you? So I'm curious, specifically in my mind, I'm thinking design, because I am very, very particular about the clients that I bring on to my full service property management, as well as my co-hosting. Like, I want my guests, if they know they're renting and I'm involved in any way, shape, or form, that they're going to have a certain level of quality. They're going to have a certain level of aesthetic. Talk to me about how you're vetting your clients.
I had a really difficult learning lesson on it, Stacy. So, one thing that I would tell you, a couple things. One, if you're working with an investor who has never set foot at their property, which is sometimes the case here, especially in the Indianapolis market and likely other markets too, I'm sure. ask for videos of a walkthrough of the property before you sign a contract with the client. I had a very difficult learning lesson in not doing that. And I was told that we needed to go to this property and put together a TV stand, have photos taken, and it was done. And this was our third client to come to us, and he was bringing us 4 houses. And I was like, yeah, I want all your properties. And a couple of them were already listed on Airbnb. So I could see them and I was like, these are great. And then I went to this one, and it became my problem child for the next 8 months until we decided to no longer have a relationship with that client. And what I learned in that process was, number one, ask for those photos and videos. But number two, really helping us understand if that investor on the other side is willing to pour into the guest experience. And so we say, hey, we prioritize our guests and we prioritize 5-star experiences. If we make suggestions on things that you could add to expand your bottom line, on things that we could add to make the guest experience better, are you open to that? Are you willing to do that? And if we have an investor tell us no, that's not someone that we're going to have a relationship with. We also have decided that we will not take on properties that are smaller than 3 bedrooms. That's a barrier. That's a boundary for us, simply from a revenue perspective and a time perspective. We also ask here in Indy, it's really important for us to know when the house was last inspected and what potential maintenance issues there are presently. So we ask that question now as well. And we certainly do ask too what their expectations in terms of a relationship are. Oftentimes we're getting clients that come to us from a negative property management experience. And in those relationships, there's certainly a lack of trust at the beginning. And so we always ask, like, what does your ideal relationship look like? If we have a client who's like, I had somebody I was chatting with once, and they had a home here. They also lived here locally. And they said, well, we're going to go after every guest stay and check on the quality of the clean. And we're going to check on how often you're messaging guests and all the things you're doing. I was like, then you're micromanaging me and not letting me do my job. And that relationship won't work for me. Mm-hmm. So there's just some red flags that I've really started to listen to or pay attention to, as well as really being clear about the kind of relationship that I want to have with our owners. And our owner that came to us that May when I was giving birth, I send her my monthly updates and I send her suggestions, and she's like, do it, execute it, all good, thanks. And it's great. And she's just making money and she's fine. And that's honestly one of my favorite things. It's easy, and she trusts us fully, and it's awesome. Some of our other clients who've come to us from those negative property management experiences, I'm like, I really got to prove myself to you, but we're going to get there and it'll all be fine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to the guy with 4 houses with the TV stand. Uh-huh. Did I hear you say correctly that you're no longer working with him?
We're not. We're no longer working with this client. So that I don't think I finished telling the story because I went off a different direction here, but we walked into this property. We were supposed to assemble a TV stand. I became a general contractor on a project that I never should have been on, was not compensated for that. And it was 100% my fault. And I take ownership for seeing now, I see the gaps. I see what I did wrong, and I see what I could do differently and do differently now. But I walked into this property, Stacy, and thought, if you want to rent this place for $50 a night, maybe. The flooring needed to be replaced. The cabinets were from 1930 and did not function. The upstairs, all of the floor, it was original hardwoods. The flooring was completely damaged, plaster on the walls falling off. It was horrible. And at this point, there was a TV stand that needed to be assembled, and the rest of the house had been mostly staged. And I was floored. So that was a lot. And I had some hard learning lessons in that. But at the end of the day, our expectations in the direction that we were taking our business didn't align with that owner's needs. And I had to make a decision to end that.
I love that you are, number one, you had a vision for what you wanted from your business. When you just started out, you are aware of when you perhaps have an owner that isn't in alignment. Hey, this doesn't feel right, and we need to course correct. Will you mind sharing with us a little bit about how you navigated that conversation with the owner and what that looked like?
Yeah, I will share. And it was messy, to be quite honest with you. And unfortunately, it was during our busiest time of year, but it kind of was what it was. we had just gone through every year for all of my businesses. I do a contract update at the beginning of the year. So I have a lawyer look at our contracts, make sure that we're protected, make sure that our clients are legally protected, and that we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. So we redid our co-hosting agreement, and I let all of our owners know about a month and a half before we were going to be doing this, like, hey, we are updating our contracts. Your terms are not going to change in terms of what we're charging you. Our fees are not going to change. Like all of that is staying the same for you. However, we just have some things that we need to have in place because we're bringing on team members. And also we want to make sure that we're protected from a liability perspective. One of the other reasons for this was that specific property we found out had knob and tube wiring throughout the home, which is an incredibly large risk. And our maintenance guy actually was in the basement one day and said, this is a hot wire. Like this could arc at any point in time and light this house on fire. And I didn't feel good about that from a guest perspective either. So, and bringing that to the owner's attention and in sharing this new contract, this owner replied to us with about 25 different requests in our contract that he wanted changed, taken out, or added. And I honestly didn't even get through reading it before I said, this doesn't make sense. We can't move forward here. And you need something different and we need something different as well. And that's okay. There were a number of different things that happened after that, like not wanting to pay our vendors that we had to deal with. And again, I came back to, this is why we put a new contract in place. And every other owner that we were working with had no problem saying, signed, sealed, delivered, here you go. Right. So I simply emailed that client and I said, you know what? Thank you so much for your reply here. I don't think that this is a relationship that is beneficial anymore. And I feel that you need a different level of support than what we're able to provide. And he'd been feeling the same way. And so that was that. And we figured out how to offboard in not the prettiest terms, but here we are.
Here we are. And better for it, right?
Better for
not only obviously have you freed up your emotional, your space, your brain space, your bandwidth to be able to support your other clients better. But I mean, it sounds horrible, but sometimes you have to go through rough patches or bumps in the road to learn from those experiences and go, you know what? I don't want to do that again. So I'm going to build out these processes to make sure X, Y, and Z doesn't happen in the future. Like it's part of business. It's part of life, right?
It totally is. And anytime that we've been working with a client who I don't feel I'm serving in the best capacity and also is just draining me mentally, I know that they may be feeling the same way. And so you have to make a decision that's right for you and also right for your client and right for your guests and right for everybody involved at the end of the day. And those decisions are not always easy as a business owner, especially it was our busy season. We had 4 properties. Like that was a huge chunk of our revenue, but no amount of money was worth feeling like I wasn't putting our guests in a space that I wanted to stay in. That's another, how do I vet clients now? If I do not want to personally stay and sleep at this property, I'm not taking it on. So that's that. But again, just like putting those boundaries in place has made me a stronger business owner. And really, like, again, my personal belief is when you make decisions like this, it opens you up for more opportunities. And so we actually started our self-management setup side of the business when we offloaded this client, and we were able to replace that revenue we would have had from his properties in doing that. So you get to redirect and recreate. And that's the fun thing about entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Pivot, always driving continuous improvement. I say relentless continuous improvement.
Yes.
Right? Oh. All right. I want to ask you a question about your time. I'm curious how you balance your time as a mama of 2 little kiddos, as a wife, as the owner of multiple businesses. Talk to us about what a typical day looks like for you and how you juggle it all.
Stacy, I shared a post recently on Instagram, and I said it was about our 3-year-old being on his computer, his little leapfrog computer. This was a few weeks ago, and I said, buddy, what are you working on? And he said, I'm working on the houses downtown. And at first I thought, oh, the guilt. Like, you've seen us working. I'm on my phone answering guests. You know that Dada has to work late after his 9 to 5 job because he's got to go check on this thing at a property. like, oh, that like parent guilt. And then I thought, hold up a minute. We chose this. Like, we chose this for the benefit of what we're going to be able to do as a family and for what we are working toward and working to cultivate. Aside from that, I think it's really important for the boys to be able to see us working and pouring into something that we feel purpose in and that we feel passionate about. So I had to like really shift my mindset around that. But to be honest with you, Stacy, like I've had to get clear about where my time is best spent, especially with co-hosting. And for me, that really comes down to being able to build the systems and processes right now so that I can hand those things off, right? I think it's very easy to get into co-hosting and people are like, hire a VA. And it's like, you can't hire that VA until you know how you would handle the situation. You can't hire that team member until you have a system and process in place to be able to teach it to them, to delegate so that they don't just completely epically fail, or you don't have an owner that's like, that was the weirdest response ever. Why was the guest responded to in that way? Because again, as a co-host, our owners can see our messaging, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, I've been focused my time there. And then we have a guest experience representative that handles on-call times. And then she also is handling our maintenance coordination now as well. So that has supported us. But in terms of a typical day, it's hard to say that I have a typical day in this industry, right? I can tell you that we do send our boys to school. And so I have from about 9:15 a.m. to about 3:30 p.m. to be able to get done what I need to do. And that may be dedicated client communication and maybe marketing efforts. It may be networking and connecting with real estate agents. It might be working on our design clients. Again, I kind of go, what are my projects that I've got to work on this week? And then what days do I have to do that? And I have days that I've dedicated specifically to meeting times as well. So that helps me kind of navigate. I know I have these blocks to be able to get these projects done or this work done. And then what are the ongoing things that I have to do? So I've gotten good at somewhat balancing, but I shared in this post, sometimes it's not a balance. I don't take my mom hat off to put my business owner hat on or vice versa. It's a dance. I danced for 17 years. So that analogy made a lot of sense to me. Like this constant fluid motion of just trying to figure out where you're going next and what are your next steps. And you have to sort of figure it out and know that it's not always going to be perfect. And there are days where I don't get everything done because something crazy happened at a property that required my attention and I had to deal with that. But there's always tomorrow and there's always the next day and it's all okay.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love that you said, it doesn't have to be perfect. I have a sign. You can't really see it. You see that it's boring, but my sign above my desk that says perfect is boring. Mm-hmm. And then progress over perfection, because I always call myself a recovering perfectionist.
Yes.
But trying to have everything perfect, trying to be perfect is debilitating. And I've personally experienced that, right? And so I think working through that, and obviously, as we just talked about, having dedication and commitment to that relentless continuous improvement, not only in your business, but as a human, as a person. How can I improve myself? What can I learn today? How can I show up for myself today? How can I show up for other people today without expecting anything in return? Those are huge things to start thinking about, because when we do, we make bigger strides, and business starts coming to us because we're attracting it. Does that make sense?
Oh my goodness, absolutely, 100%. And to your point too about like, just take a second for yourself. It's very easy, especially in this industry, when you wake up and you're like, I have guest messages, I have requests for bookings, all the things. I'm like, I don't touch my phone until 8:30 or 9 o'clock, right after I've dropped my kiddos off, and then I can get into it. But I also I have got to get outside for 10 minutes every day. I've got to spend some time just journaling and getting my thoughts out, whether that's in a voice note to myself or it's an actual written journal. Being intentional about those times when I'm going, I feel out of alignment, or like my brain can't process everything right now. Walk away for a minute. And I think that's what I have to do for me. So you have to get clear around like, what are those things that help you and support you so that you can support others and you can support the business you're trying to grow and your family and do all of the things.
I love it. So good. So if you were talking to someone and they came to you and said, Steph, I am wanting to start co-hosting, what words of wisdom would you have for them?
Find a mentor. And that is the very first thing that I would tell you. So obviously Stacy is a phenomenal mentor in the space. But I would tell you to find a mentor that is where you're trying to go. If that mentor, pay attention to their leadership, pay attention to what they're saying, pay attention to the why they're growing their business. And if that feels really in alignment for you, then they're probably going to be someone that can teach you how to get those results as well. But it's not just about having the mentor. It's about taking action on whatever it is that they're sharing with you, learning from their mistakes and taking action. We can dream and vision all day long, and I'm really good at that. But without action, none of that's coming to life. Without taking a risk, without making the phone calls or reaching out on Instagram to real estate agents or whatever it may be, our business is not growing, no matter how much I want it to grow, no matter how many clients I want, it doesn't matter. So really important to make sure that you have great support and you find a mentor who can help you along the journey and can save you some costly rating mistakes.
Totally.
And then you're taking action on whatever it is that they are providing to you. So that's what I would say. And I also would say, don't let your lack of experience in hosting be the thing that keeps you from growing a co-hosting business. You certainly will be met with people who are like, you don't have experience in this. Why would I work with you? They're not your people. They're not your people, right? But get clear on your skill set that you bring to the table. What strengths do you bring to the table? Why is this a great fit for you? How do you support your clients? How are you differentiating yourself? You can answer those questions. Now you have something that's marketable for them.
Yep. Amen. Amen. So good, Steph. This is so fun. All right. I want to move to the lightning round. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Just answer with the very first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
First question. What's your favorite place to vacation?
Ooh. Wow. New York City instantly came to my mind, but that I would say is not accurate. I think it's because I have Broadway shows in my mind. I really want to take my son to see Wicked because I'm singing that to him last night. So that was the first thing that popped into my mind. But what I would really tell you is anywhere we can be in nature. Anywhere that we can be in nature is our jam and our vibe and why we chose to do our cabin project. So get us outside. That's our vibe.
I love it. You kind of seem like a cool New York girl, though. Like I could see you.
I lived there for 2 months. I did a summer internship in the fashion industry out there. And Stacey, I loved it. I always say it's like my home away from home whenever I go now. And I obviously working in the fashion industry, took trips out there yearly, but whenever I go, I'm like, oh, here's I'm home. I can navigate the subway. I know where I am. Like, let's go do all fun New York things.
Girl, don't ask me to navigate the subway. Like it is almost guaranteed that I'm going to get on the wrong train going the wrong direction. So I'm good at many things, but not navigating the subway is
it's tricky.
So next time I go, I'll have to bring you along to share with me where I need to get to.
100%. I got you.
All right. What's one place you've never been that you want to visit?
Australia. I've never been. I really want to go. It looks amazing and beautiful. It's very far, but it's on my bucket list for sure.
Yes. And I was going to say, is there something in particular you want to see in Australia, or you just want to experience the whole country?
I think I just want to experience it. It's one of those places that our travel agent who helps us plan, and a former client of mine helps us plan all of our trips now. They did a huge trip, and I think they were there for a full month, but following along on her journey and just seeing everything that they were able to do and see and experience, I was like, this is so cool. I studied abroad in Europe. And so that's why I didn't say Europe, because I love it there, but I feel like I've seen so many different pieces of it. Australia would offer a very different experience.
Wow. Yeah. So cool. All right. What's one thing you know now that you wished you knew when you were starting out in the world of co-hosting?
There are many that want to try to sell you on how passive it is. And it is one of the least passive things that I've ever done. Now, what I think is cool about co-hosting is that unlike what I've done with branding and marketing and coaching clients, I can very easily see how I'll be able to hand various different pieces off. So it may be more passive someday, but it certainly isn't passive at the beginning as you are trying to establish the business and build the systems and processes that you need in order to be able to support your team. So it's not passive. Don't let anyone fool you.
Amen, sister. It is not passive. Now, you can build a team around you so that as the leader of your co-hosting business, you can be passive, which is what I have done. It's the model that I've chosen. But if I were executing the day-to-day myself, not passive.
Not passive. And you can get there. Like you can build what you've built, Stacey.
Totally.
It's so possible. But you've got to go through a period of time where you've got to build the thing.
Yep. Amen. Amen. All right. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
I'm not sure if this was kind of something that was instilled in me by multiple different mentors, but seeing risks as opportunities and not risks. And that came from when I was building the Weber Co. and our branding and marketing company and starting to hire a team. It was this conversation around like, how much is this going to cost me monthly? How much will this person cost me? And it was like, Steph, stop thinking about cost and how does investing in this person allow you to grow in different ways, right? And we've got to really think about that in the short-term rental industry as well. I mean, what we did with our cabin project was a huge risk, but instead of seeing it for us as risk, I'm like, this is a huge opportunity that will expand our wealth in exponential ways. And we may never have an opportunity to do something like this again. Why we have to do it now. And so really being able to see risks as opportunities and jump on them, if it makes sense, has been a huge shift for me.
That's awesome. Awesome. I couldn't agree more. All right. Last question. What's one thing and or person that you're grateful for today?
My husband, who probably doesn't hear this enough, but we're high school sweethearts, and he's supported me through every entrepreneurial endeavor that I've ever wanted to go forth with. And he does that without complaining, and he takes care of our family, and he cooks for us, and he does the grocery shopping. Like, he's amazing. And he still works his 9 to 5, and he supports what we're doing with co-hosting by supporting our clients also, and just does it and knows that we're working on something bigger together. And that's really cool.
That's amazing. Okay. What is your hubby's name?
His name is Colin.
Okay, Colin, you better listen to this episode.
Good one.
It's a good one. It's so fun to talk to you. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your experience, and kudos to you, girlfriend. I think you're rocking it out, and you should be so super proud.
Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate it. And again, thank you so much for having me on here today.
Now, before you go, I want to give a quick shout out to some of the amazing women inside the Female Short-Term Rental Investors Facebook group. Just a few days ago, Yulia Orloff posted, "We have a pet-friendly short-term rental, but charge $50 per day for any number of dogs. That's how much extra our cleaner charges. Most people don't put their pets on the reservation. Should I let it slide every time, mention it in a review, or send a $50 request? The current guests asked for an early check-in and late checkout on a 2-day stay, but didn't mention they have a dog." Now, already 40 separate women have chimed in and shared their feedback. One of the things that impressed me most was Sarah Kennedy. And she says, "I have an immediate message sent out to guests that reminds them to check their reservation for accuracy. Hi, guest. Thanks for booking. I'm your host, Sarah. I'll send you the code for the door the morning of check-in. In the meantime, please make sure that the proper number of guests and pets are registered so I can be properly prepared for your stay. Also, please take a moment to look over the house rules and let me know if you have any questions I can help you with." Sarah, what a wonderful message, and thank you so much for sharing with our community. And with that, my friends, that wraps up today's episode. I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and I will see you very soon.